And now, a thought from man. I'll admit, when I first heard about Amazon's The Adventures of Rocky and Bullwinkle reboot, I was skeptical at first because I didn't know how this could work. I didn't know if they would try to play to the cool crowd or go for a more timeless feel like the original series. That's always just something you think about when it comes to reboots. You just wonder, are they going to be faithful? Are they going to be their own thing? Or are they just going to not bother at all in trying to capture what made the original series so great? So you can understand why I'm a bit skeptical. But after sitting down and watching it, I can honestly say it is a very charming reboot. It has so much charm to it that I just wanted to carry me off into Happily Ever After. Wait.
What? That doesn't make any sense.
The series is a reboot of the J. Ward classic Rocky and Bullwinkle series from the 60s, and it's created by a team of different writers and producers whose works range from Austin Powers, Powerpuff Girls OG, Ned's Declassified School Survival Guide, and just a bunch of different shows that honestly just kind of says this has a lot of variety coming into it. The people working on it just come from so many differing backgrounds that the execution just kind of blooms with this sense of variety coming into it. One sort of weird thing about this is that it's an Amazon series when DreamWorks is known for putting their shows on Netflix. So it's kind of odd that they would decide, hey, let's put this on another type of streaming service rather than just putting on the same service you use normally. It's just kind of odd, but I don't know, I guess that's just something they wanted to try out. Maybe they're considering going to Amazon and doing their thing there. I mean, I can't blame them, but it's just kind of weird. The main premise of the series is just an assortment of differing arcs that last for about 4 to 5 episodes and are just about the characters getting into crazy misadventures. It honestly feels like a nice update to the original show and works by not having to date the characters by making them say or do any of that annoying crap that makes them hip and with it. It knows, let's try to go for a more timeless feel and understand what the series from the 60s was about. Just this moose and squirrel getting into these wacky adventures and getting into all sorts of hijinks. It manages to capture the spirit of the original series while at the same time making it different enough that it doesn't feel like this is just the original series. Why does this need to exist? It just differs itself. It has its own sense of identity, so you can judge it for its own sake, not just on whether or not is it faithful. And that's always something many reboots should strive to do. Be their own thing rather than just living in the shadow of the original. And this series is all the more better for it.
I don't know about you, but I sure feel secure.
The characters of Rocky and Bullwinkle are done a lot more differently this time around. Where in the original series, they were a bit more subtle and subdued in their comedy. They were still kind of wacky and fun and all that. This time around, they decided to be a bit more over the top with their humor, particularly in just how they act. It's a bit more goofier than before. In some aspects, I kind of feel like it works because it helps differentiate this series from the original. It doesn't feel like, oh, we're just being the original now. It just gives it a nice sense of identity. Granted, the way the characters act, it's sort of on the lines of depending on how you would feel. If you're a purist, you might not like it too well, because there are definitely some major differences between the characters, particularly with Rocky. Before, he was sort of a voice of reason for Bullwinkle's idiocy and would be a bit cynical towards Bullwinkle, but here they are both pretty goofy in their antics. Bullwinkle will have some crazy or silly idea and Rocky will end up joining him instead of approaching it with a cynical attitude. He even does a lot more silly gags than before. Granted, he still retains some of the common sense of the duo, so it's not too different. He still acts like the voice of reason if Bullwinkle misunderstands something. So this kind of does work in not feeling like just a cheap imitation of the original. But fans of the original might not enjoy it too much because the characters might not feel right to them. But I say the characters not acting like the original series works because if they did act exactly the same, you would get the same old stuff as before, which would just destroy the show's reason to exist. So with this big differentiation here, I feel like this does help the series stand out more as its own thing and help you judge it as its own thing. So you kind of have to take the characters at heart. The characters still retain that nice charm they had about them, it's just they feel a bit more updated. It feels more like these are the same characters you know before, but more in a modern take without going for a dated means. You know, they're not spouting dumb references and they're not acting too far out of character. It still feels like they're just right. It's like you captured the spirit of them while at the same time adding something unique to them so they stand out from the originals. So I honestly say kudos to the creators on that part.
Things were looking up for our heroes.
The antagonists this time around are the same as always. It's still Boris, Natasha, and Fearless Lida. It's still those great, funny antagonist villains who just come up with these convoluted schemes to take over the world and end up backfiring because of their own incompetence. They're just as funny as you remembered from the original series. They're the only ones without much of a major update to them. Like, they still feel like the originals from before. So I'm okay with that. I'm fine with Rocky and Bullwinkle being changed a bit just to help identify the series more, while Boris, Natasha, and Fearless Leader keep themselves just the way they are, because they were such funny characters as is. Like, does anything need to change for them? They work just fine, and whenever they're on screen, it's always funny. So honestly, I'm fine with some changes here to the characters while some stay the same. It manages to balance itself properly, and that's something I didn't think could be too possible, but this show managed to find a way.
So, what you do this weekend?
I went to Henchman Con, met some new enemies, attended seminar on booby traps that go BOOM! Super evil.
Oh yeah, I did the evil too, only more evil.
No, I am more evil.
The evil this, the evil that.
Evil.
Boris! Natasha! Stop saying things so I can say things.
The humor is very different from the original 60s series. Whereas the 60s series focused on being a lot corny and goofy and kind of just sort of hit or miss, this one embodies that spirit of the original, but it manages to kind of push it further. It adds more silliness and wackiness than the original. And a lot of the jokes, rather than just being plain hit or miss, they're a bit more hit than they are misses. I find myself laughing at this a lot more. The original did have a few jokes that just kind of fell flat on their heads, but this one has jokes that honestly land perfectly, or just manage to get a nice chuckle at least. So it's honestly kind of nice that they're trying to be better than the original, that they have a goal in mind of not trying to be the original or just emulate the original. It's like we want to push past the original. We want to kind of go beyond what the original was doing and go for nice corny humor that captures the original spirit but is a bit funnier than the original. That's just something I can admire about anything that's being made. If it feels like you're trying to put more effort into it and make it better than what it was, and you actually succeed while also capturing the original spirit of what made it special. And I mean it, when these jokes land, they land. I honestly have a very good time just laughing at some of the funniness of this show. I just can't get enough of how charming and funny this humor is. It managed to capture the original's affinity for subversion with a lot of their jokes, and I genuinely laugh at some of the subtle and even the over-the-top jokes. And it's just so funny because it's like, it manages to be like the original, but updating it proper. Like, it's sort of akin to the new DuckTales. Captures the spirit of it while at the same time differentiates itself so you judge it on its own merit. That's just always very nice. And I mean it when I say this is just a very hilarious series. I just can't get enough of the humor here.
Agent 1 to Director. Super spies Boris and Natasha are entering the airport. Psst.
Roger that. Follow them and find out what they're up to.
Over and out. Psst.
You don't have to make that sound with your mouth.
Copy that.
Stop!
The animation is very similar to that new Mr. Peabody series, even doing well as to have that nice background work. The animation ultimately feels like an update to the original, which works very well. It's very pleasing to the eye. I enjoy the very sharp aesthetic that they went for with this. It just feels nice. It kind of feels like a good update of the original's animation. The character movements feel reminiscent of the original series. I mean, the original had the budget of a vending machine snack, so it had the excuse of weak animation, but the weak animation gave it a nice charm. So to see this series sort of capturing that style, but updating it properly for a modern audience, is a nice touch. Because let's face it, if it tried too hard to capture the cheapness of the original style, it would feel like they weren't even trying. And there's just no excuse for not trying in this day and age. So it's very nice that they're able to capture the original spirit of the animation style and that cheapness, while at the same time feeling like, yeah, we are capturing that style, but not emulating it so much so that it feels like it's a cheap show. It feels like they have to be a bit more precise as to where they want the sort of two-frame animations to happen. So it emulates the original, but at the same time doesn't copy verbatim. You feel like this is like that, but it feels like it's still its own thing and a nice update to it. That's honestly good on their part.
Bullwinkle! Bullwinkle! M-O-O-S-E!
What's that spell?
Bullwinkle!
No, Moose!
Agree to disagree. Great work, buddy.
Thanks, but the squad was a bit shaky on the pyramid lift, weren't you guys?
The voice actors for this series are honestly very good. They still captured the characters very well. But one character in particular that honestly sticks out is Rocky. He's played by Tara Strong, and surprisingly she's not that recognizable. If I had went in not knowing she was voicing him, I would have been surprised because she's not using her typical boy voices like she does for, say, Timmy Turner or Ben 10. The thing I like most about Tara Strong playing Rocky is that she plays it differently than the late June Foray. Tara owns the role and makes it her own instead of trying to copy June verbatim. Her performance feels and sounds like Rocky while at the same time works with the way Rocky is in this series. I honestly can't imagine June playing this Rocky, since this Rocky is a bit more silly than before. He's just a lot more over eccentric, excitable, and all that, so I don't feel like June Foray would have been able to capture that too well with how they do it here. Tara's delivery works far better for this, so that's just some nice work on her part. I really gotta say kudos to Tara Strong. She does so well in this that I almost forgot that she voices it.
Things always have a way of working out!
This is a rare case for a reboot. It's very akin to the DuckTales reboot. It captures the essence of the original while at the same time differentiates enough that it can be judged on its own merit. The characters are just as funny, witty, and charming just like the original series and are noticeably different from their OG counterparts, but still embody the spirit of what made them great. It still has that meta humor that we've all come to associate with Rocky and Bullwinkle. This is a perfect series for new fans coming in and for old fans who want to see their favorite characters again with just enough of a difference to them that it doesn't feel like the same stuff you've been getting. It's just a very pleasant and enjoyable series that I honestly, even as somebody who grew up with Rocky and Bullwinkle, just can't get enough of. But that's just a thought.
Thank you.